stage Executive Director of Spark Development Network, John Edmiston.
Good morning, Rock community. We are so glad you're here. Before we get officially started, I just want to ask one question. How does it feel? How does it feel to be a part of those numbers? No, really. How does it feel? Realize those numbers were only 12 months of what you as a Rock community has accomplished, and they're simply amazing. I love this quote from the movie Gladiator. What we do in life echoes in eternity. Yet for most, including Maximus, their echoes fade quickly, barely going beyond their own lifetimes. But the work that we embrace and the cause we devote ourselves to, those echoes thunder through eternity, changing eternity for many people. Now, in 1983, Steve Jobs famously asked the CEO of Pepsi, "Do you want to sell sugar water for the rest of your life, or do you want to come with me and change the world?" I think we could have asked Steve the similar question. Steve, do you want to sell trinkets for the rest of your life? I mean, you guys seen the iPhone over the last 3 years. Hasn't really changed too much. Not really changing the world, right? While that criticism is a little harsh, our mission is so much more noble in the context of eternity. What we do helps people change their path from the pits of hell to eternity with their loving Creator. Yeah, you guys can have a little energy. If you're going to put the world's biggest introvert on stage, you guys can have a little energy too, all right? Now, I don't know about you, but I love watching SpaceX Starship launches. Anybody else in the room like to see that? Yeah? My favorite part is when the whole team is celebrating and cheering as the rocket goes through every stage. That's my favorite part. And I don't know what you've been told or what you've heard, but I definitely don't get choked up every time I watch it. But frankly, again, their mission pales in comparison to the work that we get to work on. And that reminds me of this quote from the Bible. "There is rejoicing in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents." So perhaps there's not a lot of celebrating in our work going on earth, but it's going on in heaven. And for some reason, God's just called us to be a part of that mission with him. So how does that feel? Okay, it's getting a little better. Now, there's no better time, truly, to do what we're doing than right now. Christianity, for generations, has been on the losing side, and now we're actually taking ground back from the enemy. And you can certainly see that over the last 2 weeks, have you not? Yeah? Even the last 2 days, it's pretty amazing. It was just a few days ago, I was watching a rally of thousands of college students, and they were chanting, "Christ is King, Christ is King." Wow, I mean, that's just amazing. And I don't know about you, but I can't wait to sit back and see what happens next. No, we're not going to sit back. Truly, now's the time to step in. In fact, here's the analogy I think we need to look at. We need to think of ourselves as the third chimp on the ramp of Noah's Ark. And it's starting to rain. It's time to get in the fight. And I don't mean fight with our fists. It's fighting with our heads, our hearts, and every fiber of our being. Now, looking throughout this room, I know a lot of you have been doing that for years, and it's just amazing to be able to work alongside you. But I also know in a room this size, there's people maybe who aren't fully in the fight, or maybe you haven't joined the fight yet at all. And now's the time. We have to lean in to do this. There's a historic opportunity right now, I believe, to apply digital tools and AI in the service of God's church. These tools can radically change the impact the church can have on our culture. Together, we've built an amazing open source project backed by a nonprofit and sponsored and funded by this amazing community. And we're far from done. We on the core team, we have so many more features we want to add. But if I'm being honest, there's even more features you've yet to implement. So we have a lot of work ahead of us. We want to thank God for the agenda that we have over the next 3 days. It's just way bigger than our team could ever put together on its own. And so we want to give him the glory for that. Would you pray with me? Heavenly Father, just thank you for bringing us together, especially those here in this room. Lord, we just ask over the next 3 days that our words would be your words, and our thoughts, your thoughts. Lord, just give us the wisdom and energy and thoughts to guide your church on this new exciting mission to bring these new technologies, these digital technologies, in the service of your church. We ask these things in your Son's name. Amen. Okay, so buckle up, hold on, and let's get going. I believe we're standing at a transformative time in the church history. Digital ministry and its tools are probably the most powerful amplifier of the gospel the church has ever known. But we got to be careful, because if we're not careful, without wisdom, these tools can be the biggest distraction to the church. And if we're being honest, if we don't have discernment, they could be a costly detour from our true mission. So we must proceed with discernment and caution. And that's what this morning is all about. I want to talk to you about what I believe are the 5 key questions for success in digital ministry. Now, the first question is perhaps the most important question. What is our why? If we don't know our why, we'll never hit the mark. Because in moments of disruption, it's not just innovation that we need, it's actually clarity. Clarity must come first. And if we're seeking clarity, I don't think there's a better approach, a better system of thought than the first principles approach. Now, some of you might be asking, well, what is the first principles approach? Well, it's what Elon Musk used to change space travel and electric cars. It's the same approach that Steve Jobs used to reinvent how we interact with computers. It's a little different. Typically, when we go to solve problems, we think about what is, and then we try to make that a little bit better. So we kind of change by using analogy. That's not what first principles does. First principles wipes out analogy, wipes out what is, and tries to go back to the starting point, truth. And I think this approach aligns so well with our faith. And that's what today is all about. It's grounding ourselves in the core mission of the church and asking, how can digital tools amplify this mission without distracting from it? Now, the church has been through many technology advancements in its lifetime, all the way back from the Roman road systems through the printing press. Telephone was actually a pretty big tool for it at one point, and the internet. Let's hop back in a time machine and watch how the church implemented a specific technology in its history.
Meine brothers, picture this. We take the printing press, that contraption that makes the books, and we use it for ministry.
The printing press is for fancy scholars, not for church folk.
Nine, listen to me. We can print sermons, the best sermons from pastors all across the Holy Roman Empire.
But what if people start shopping for sermons like they shop for bread? Oh, I don't like Hans's preaching this week. I'll just read the printed version from that elegant fellow in Munich.
Nein, Wilhelm. I mean, okay, you know how Hans here makes the best strudel in Hamburg?
Mein strudel is legendary.
And when people taste your strudel, do they never come back to the bakery?
Nein, they come back more. They bring their friends.
Exactly. The printed sermons will be like strudel samples. People will taste the good teaching and want more.
And what happens when people start staying home to read instead of coming to church?
Nine. The printed sermon is like the leftover sauerkraut. You give it to them after they come for the fresh meal. We can also print kleine Traktate, little guides. 10 ways to avoid the plague. How to pray while churning butter. Why your neighbor's cow is not possessed.
That last form might actually be useful.
And then, we print small tracts for the lost souls.
What? You went to give books to the lost people?
9. They don't just slide the tract under the door and run like Frenchmen. They use it as a conversation starter. Because the mission stays the same, but the methods can improve. We still preach, we still visit the sick, We still break bread together, but now we can also put good teaching in people's hands.
So you're saying the printed materials are like tools to help us shepherd better?
Exactly, like giving the shepherd a better staff. It doesn't replace the shepherd, it helps him reach the sheep.
Next, you'll be saying we should nail these papers to the church door, like some kind of announcement board.
That's brilliant, Hans.
I was being sarcastic.
So the printed sermon from that brilliant pastor in Cologne could help our people learn, even when he's not here?
Now you're beginning to understand. Our mission is to feed the sheep, not to protect our feeding methods.
Well, Pastor Gunther, you've convinced me. Let's try this print ministry. But if people stop coming to church, you're paying for the ale at the next harvest festival.
Done. Gentlemen, we are about to revolutionize ministry. In 500 years, people will look back and say, those visionaries in Hamburg, they knew what they were doing.
I was a little afraid that the pounding onto the door was going to go over your heads, but I'm glad it didn't. I'm glad there's some Lutherans in the audience here today. So what did we learn from this video? Well, I think there's two key takeaways. One is innovation always looks obvious in hindsight. They raise some pretty valid concerns, right? But we, standing in the future, know that those concerns are nothing to worry about. When I started working with churches in technology, I worked at a church, right out in about the early 2000s. I ran into this too. It took me 2 years to convince the church that we should put our podcasts online. 2 years. And a lot of the concerns were the same ones we heard in the video. And in hindsight, of course, we all do that now, right? That's an obvious thing. The second thing I think we can look to is how Pastor Gunther talked about mission over method. Notice whenever he talked about it, he aligned it to the mission. There were new methods, but it was all aligned to the mission. Okay, so what is the mission of the church? Well, this is probably a pretty easy question to answer in this audience. But if we boil it all down, I think all of our churches could agree to some basic definition like this one. The mission of the church is to help people know Jesus, be discipled in physical community, and live as change makers in the world. Now, we've highlighted physical community. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. So the second question, well, what is digital ministry? What do you mean when you say digital ministry? Well, again, a good definition of digital ministry would be the application of digital tools to amplify the mission of the church. What is it not? It's not a detour. We're not trying to change our mission. We're just trying to add additional tools. It's also what I would say is it's not our current online strategy. In fact, I think our current online strategy hinders us more than it helps. Our current brochureware websites are sometimes more of an obstacle for casting vision, especially to our leadership, than they are helpful. We're not talking about what we currently have. We're talking about something entirely different. So what are we talking about? Well, it's more scripture. It's more teaching, prayer, community, serving, worship, all the things we're currently doing today, except we're trying to do them in a digital way. It's not about new things. It's about doing things in a new way. Same mission, additional methods. We're not even saying we need to get rid of the current methods, the current analog methods. We're just saying we should do things in addition. Now, when we talk about this, like, how do we anchor our thinking on this? And I think that there are some anchors that we can look at. I would propose 6 of them. The first, and probably the most important in my mind, is we must break the Sunday-only mold. Pretty much all of our churches, we talk about not being Sunday-only Christians, yet at the same time, we model a Sunday-only church. 2 churches that are really pushing the boundaries of this, especially in a digital way, of making sure that they can be with their people every day of the week, are LCBC and the Summit Church. They've taken their Rock mobile applications and they've created these daily quiet time experiences. One's called Daily Revival and one's called Daily Experiences. So this is a quiet time that they lead their people through on a daily basis. It includes Bible reading, prayer requests, focused prayer points, video content from pastors, and this is all built right within their Rock mobile application. So the data is all the same in the database, and all the tracking is built in. They're having amazing results. Let me just show you one metric that blew my mind when I saw it. By going through and working with the community and getting metrics within your databases, we know that the average Rock church gets between 3 to 5 prayer requests, or prayers per prayer request. So if you have a prayer request in your database, most churches are getting about 3 to 5 prayers per request. The Summit Church, they get over 200 prayers per prayer request because of this experience. That's pretty amazing, right? Prayer changes things. Prayer changes the life of the person who needs prayer. Prayer changes the life of the person who prayed. But we also know prayer just changes the world, and that's an amazing thing. There's another church I wanted to highlight that's doing something very similar. Trinity Fellowship has built into their Rock mobile app this concept that they call journeys. So this feature allows people to get together in very small groups and to go through Scripture on a daily basis. And then they can share their thoughts and experiences as they read through that. It's another example of a church who's using digital tools to be with their people every day of the week. The second anchor is to empower through participation. Sometimes we need to make sure that we work through our people, not just on our people. So much is the case for our staff and pastors at the church that sometimes if we're not careful, we're always working on people, but we're not working through them. We're not inviting them in to the factory, to the ministry factory, and letting them help produce results and fruit. Now, the Bible says that our job is to equip the saints for the work of ministry and for building up the body of Christ. So who's the hero of the story? It shouldn't be our pastors and our staff. It should be everybody who's a part of the ministry. And if we're not careful, we can fall into the trap of the professionalization of the gospel. This is where we do all the work, and we're operating on our people and not through them, not inviting them in to be a hero of the story. So how do we do this? Like, what tools do we need to give our people to be successful? Well, I think the first group of tools is the tools that we have, right? It's a lot of the tools that we have in Rock. All of our staff and all of our pastors have these amazing tools to, store people in a database, have their contact, store notes, have reminders. All those things, they should have the same thing. Also, they need tools to share content in a way that's simple and effective. Our people are very powerful if we can just give them these tools. Now, a lot of time, if we think about the professionalization of ministry, there's a lot of facets of that, okay? But one example of maybe sometimes when we put too much attention is in the area of search engine optimization. So this is where we craft our content and our sites to make sure that we're found in search engines. Now, this is a good idea, and we should do this. But sometimes we take it maybe a little too far, put a little too much effort into that, and instead we ignore what I call God's people optimization, GPO. Our people are raving fans for what we're doing. They want to be a part of that. Now, Apple spends a lot of time on SEO, and Apple fans are known as kind of being raving fans, right? But they're nothing like someone who just stepped out of the baptistry. If we give them torches, they'll light the world on fire. And we need to make sure that we're working through them and that we're empowering them. So what benefits do we have for that? One is that we can directly impact when we work through our people. When we work through SEO, we're working through algorithms that no one quite fully understands and that they're changing all the time. If we work through our people, we have direct access to them, and we can shape that directly. Also, it can't be taken from us. Through bias or even someday maybe even banning, SEO goes away, but our people don't. Also, it's the biblical approach. We're supposed to equip the saints. We need to make sure that we're working through our people, through GPO, and not just doing SEO. And again, I'm not saying we shouldn't do SEO. We should just balance that approach. Okay, what's the third anchor? We have to engage two audiences with intention. Now, these audiences are probably audiences that you could guess. The first is our church family. We need to make sure that we're working with them, giving them tools and content for themselves. But we also need to be working with seekers. And some of that content's going to come from us, but more of it should be coming through our church family. They should be working to bring these seekers in through God's people optimization. Okay, with those two audiences known, let's look at the fourth anchor point. And that is to integrate, not to isolate. So what do we mean by that? The future is not digital or analog, but a fusion of the two. It's a knitting together these two strategies that we're going to find the best results. Let me just give you one simple example. Say we were going to do a worship series called Wonderfully Made, how we're each unique individuals that are fearfully and wonderfully made. So maybe on the first week, we'll have a sermon on our uniqueness in Christ. So I think we've all heard a sermon similar to that. But we're going to follow up that analog experience with a digital experience. So right after that, maybe Monday morning, we're going to send out to people an email for them to take an online spiritual gifts assessment. Good news, there's a free one built into Rock. You guys all know that, right? And it's super easy to send out. I believe within 1 to 2 hours, pretty much anybody who has some experience with Rock can send this out to thousands of people. They can take their spiritual gifts, they can find those out, and guess what? They'll take that to the next sermon series, or next sermon, which is on the fruits of the Spirit. And now they're sitting in that experience, and they see what their spiritual gifts are, and they can tailor that right to them. Now, some of you are probably saying, well, yeah, but people don't come every week. Well, if you come to week 2, you have some serious FOMO, and you're going to want to go take that assessment. Coming out of that week, you will then come home and take a DISC assessment. Now we're going to find out about our personalities and how we're unique in those personalities and so different, which will lead us to week 3. It's a sermon on how to serve and all the different places you can serve. Now think about this. I know my spiritual gifts and I know my personality, and now I'm going to hear about these serving opportunities that I can tailor right to me. Not only is that going to be more successful in getting people to sign up because they're like, oh, wait, greeter? That would be a terrible role for me. But, oh, I can go help the digital team do data entry or write reports. That's for me. You're going to have much more success because people are going to see where they plug in. Also, you're going to have much more success because we're going to follow that up with a web page that they can go to and get a personalized one-click sign up for the ministry opportunity that's best suited for them. So this is just one way of how we can stitch things together to have much better results. And I believe that every analog experience that we have, we should think, how can we apply digital tools to amplify this tool and this mission, not to replace it? Okay, anchor 5. Measure what matters. So it's common to hear in the hallways of churches now this phrase of data-driven decisions. I love that. We should be making data-driven decisions. But we got to make sure we look at the right data because not all data is equal. We need to make sure that we're prioritizing and elevating spiritual growth and life change metrics above other metrics like likes, views, and follows. Now, those metrics are great. We should capture those too. But when we go to make those decisions, we have to make sure that we're looking at the right data, the data that moves the needle. It'd be kind of like driving your car and deciding that you're going to look at the oil pressure instead of the speedometer. You definitely want to look at the speedometer. And of course, that sounds obvious, but when we're in meetings, we need to be challenging to make sure that we're looking at the right data that's directly linked to spiritual growth and life changed. Anchor 6, we're going to keep pushing on this concept, is we have to stay rooted. Digital tools should not change our mission. Now, digital tools spread a wide net, far beyond even some of our physical communities. So digital reach is a tool, and it's a very great tool, and it's a very wide tool. Now, we have to be careful, though. Digital reach is a tool, but physical community should always be our goal. Every time we reach out digitally, our goal should be bringing them into physical community. If we don't, we stunt their spiritual growth, in a sense. Now, when we cast that net, it's okay to catch fish that you can't pull in to your boat, but you have to also make sure that you can get them into a right boat. It used to be, way back when I worked at the churches in the early 2000s, we had this thing called a like church directory. It was a paper catalog, literally, that we would use every week. We would get emails in, usually on Monday, saying, hey, I attended your church. I live in Ohio. Is there a like church like this in my area? And we'd open up the directory and we'd send them back the results. I feel like we need that in a digital sense too. So churches can work together to say, hey, I'm glad you found a connection with our ministry. Let us help you get into a physical community. Because again, if we don't, we're going to stunt their spiritual growth. Okay, let's move on to the next question. What trends should we be paying attention to? Well, this is a great question because, as the famous Bob Dylan once said, the times, they are a-changing. And boy, are they. The more I dug into this, I mean, obviously we knew the times are changing, but the more I dug into this over the past few months to prepare for this presentation, boy, are they changing. Before we dive too deep into that, let's take a look at the 5 categories that all digital content can fall under, okay? So the first one is arts and entertainment. These are the things that we go to just to relax and to unwind. So it's things like our streaming platforms that we would generally go to for that. The next is life and meaning. So just what is the purpose of life? The next category is skills and insights. Okay, I need to learn something new. Where am I going to? YouTube, online courses, etc. The next category is social connection. So this is where I'm going to go to find out what my friends and family are doing. So this is definitely the social networks. And the last category, news and updates. So I want to find out what's going on in the world. All digital communications can fall into one of these 5 categories. Now, all 5 categories are going to be greatly impacted by digital tools and especially AI, but they're going to be impacted in different ways. Arts and entertainment is going to be much more impacted in the area of generation and creation, and not so much on consumption. There'll be a little bit of disruption there, but not nearly as much as creation. I mean, you've all seen that on social media, all the amazing videos being generated by AI. Now, the church, if we look at the right-hand column, is mostly relevant in the life and meaning and skills and insights. We play in all areas for sure, but those are the 2 heavy ones. And unfortunately, those are the ones that are probably going to be disrupted the most in the future. So how are they going to be disrupted the most? More and more people are going to be turning to AI agents and assistants for content in these categories. And we already see that, right? I mean, you guys are doing that. So how this content is consumed is going to be greatly impacted. Also, consumption is going to be highly curated. So when we go to these AI platforms, guess what? We don't get a voice. We, the church, don't get a voice. The AI platform has the voice. It's also going to be subjectively summarized. This is just the way LLMs work. The technology that backs these AIs basically is going to summarize this in a very subjective way that it sees fit. And AI will hamper direct access to the content sources because there's really no need to proceed, right? So if we look at the backing technology to AI, for the most part, it's large language models, LLMs. These are built for pluralism and balance. They've basically ingested the full world's content and gives it back to you in a very pluralistic and balanced way. This does not match well with our faith because our faith has a very exclusive claim, right? That Jesus is the only way. This is in direct battle with its pluralistic and balanced way, is that I'm going to say everything. Now, if you ask it a very specific question about Christianity, then you're probably going to get a very Christian response. But if a seeker is looking for something like, hey, Where do I go when I die? What do different faith traditions believe? You're not going to get the answer that we would want them to get by any means. I always kind of think of AI as being that friend who knows everything and it subjectively tells you all about it. And that's not something that we should be really excited about. Also, not just consumption. It's also going to change how content is discovered. The rise of AI agents and assistants will sideline traditional SEO and significantly reduce click-through rates. Now, this is just a fact already. Last week, Billboard magazine and Rolling Stone magazine, their parent company, sued Google for this. They saw their click-through rate has already gone down 30%. And so they're suing because that's the result of why they're suing. They're suing for some technical reasons that are also very scary too, but probably not germane to what we're talking about. But we're already seeing that today, and it's going to continue to happen, and we're going to talk more about that. So the web search and SEO has become more difficult and less effective, and we already see that. How many people here have reduced the number of times that they've clicked on something on a search engine because they saw the AI insights? Like, we're all doing that, right? And it's only going to get worse. These are the statistics that show you how the AI insight features have been rolling out. So in January, about 7% of all web searches had an AI insight. Now in July, they say it's about 55%. I think it's way higher. And by the end of the year, it's going to be 70%. And again, I think it's going to be way higher because I don't see any searches that don't have an AI insight. Now let's think about this, how it's going to impact our two audiences. If we think about the seeker, why does the seeker even come to our website? Well, they probably come for organizational information, sampling. They just want to see, like, hey, what's this church like? What's the worship like? What's the sermon like? And the third is finding spiritual truth. So they're out there searching for spiritual truth, and they land on our site. Today, the traffic patterns, I would say, look like this. A majority of it's coming through the search engine and then coming to our site. And a little bit comes directly, usually because someone that we know referred us to the site. Now, when the big baddie comes here of AI, which I love AI, but it's going to change everything, what's the traffic pattern? Well, people are going to go directly to AI. They're not going to go through the search engine, and very little of that traffic is actually going to make it to our site. Also note that on the search side, the bar's a little bigger at the top, and it's a little smaller coming out, because again, people are not going to actually click on the 10 links below the AI insight. That's something the industry calls zero click. So you went to the search engine, but you clicked on nothing because you got the answer above. Now, I think this is true, but I thought, well, I got to put this to the test. So I went into OpenAI and I said, hey, I'm looking for a good church in Peoria, Arizona. I was actually quite shocked at the results. You can't read them, but they're amazing. They're the churches I would have recommended to someone who asked me, but more than that, it's perfectly summarized. Hey, this is a big church. Hey, this is more of a neighborhood church. Blown away. All different denominations were there, and this is just where we're getting started. Now, what does the traffic patterns look like for our church family? Well, first of all, why does the church family come to our site? Mainly, they come for logistics. And that is, like, I need to sign up to serve, or I need to look at my serving schedule, or I need to change my giving. They're usually there to do something. Second, I would say it's spiritual growth. Hey, I'll go to the church site. I'm going to look for an article. And third, I just need to get reminded of service times or just some organizational information. So what does that traffic pattern look like today? Well, I'd say it looks something like this. Most of them are coming straight to our site, but if we're being honest, there's a lot of people who have been going to our church for 10 years who still can't remember the URL to our site, and so they go through the search engine. So I would say it looks somewhat like this. So what happens when AI comes in? Well, believe it or not, it's going to be something like that. Now, you might be saying, well, how's that going to happen? Like logistics, man, how's that going to work? Well, with AI, we're going to have tool sets where the AI is going to do the work for us. Need to update your giving? Just tell your AI that you wanted to update your giving. That's already here. But it won't be long before we just turn to these AI agents for everything. I want to book a vacation, go to AI and say, hey, what are some options? Where could I go? Okay, I like that one. Book the travel. Again, it was only a little more than a week ago that Google announced AP2, which is payment system, very well thought out payment system for AI agents. And as you're going to see, we need to build a tool set to allow this, and we'll talk about that later this morning. So what does this mean for the church? Well, it means something I probably wouldn't have agreed to a year ago. And that is that we need to be developing our own outposts to drive direct and referral traffic to them. Because we're going to get disassociated or disenfranchised from these other means. Search engines are still going to be there, but very rarely used. And these AI agents are going to basically be handling so much more of the traffic. If we want to be able to deliver truth right to people, we have to be developing our own outposts. That's not to say we run away from the current outposts. We should still put our sermons in YouTube. We should still be present in social media. But if we want to have a direct voice with people, we have to develop our own outposts. And that's going to be primarily for our church family, the mobile app, and for the seekers, we're going to need to build out our websites to have these types of tools. Okay, so what does this afford us? Again, we're going to have direct control of our messaging when it's on our site. We're not going to have some subjective AI trying to tell the truth that it is very biased and pluralistic. Also, we can personalize that experience richly. You really can't personalize things when it's not on your platform. There's some light personalization you can do in social media, but nothing like what we can do in a rock-powered website. Also, it's going to ensure that we don't get deplatformed. Now, that's a scary term. There's two ways that we could get deplatformed. The first way, when we hear that word deplatformed, we probably think banned or blocked. That's not the one I really worry too much about. Currently, there's not a lot of bias in AI, but with a few clicks of a mouse in one person's office building, that can change dramatically. But again, that's not the one I worry the most about. Instead, I worry about being displaced or bypassed. Hey, they're just not even coming to our site anymore. So we've lost control over that direct messaging, and that's something that I think we should be very cautious about and we should be planning for. Now, some of you might be saying, well, but John, that's the user interface that's going to replace all of our websites? Like chat? It's just a lot of text. People don't even like to read. Yeah, that's what we have today, but it won't be long until AI agents look like this, where they develop real-time user experiences with cards, carousels, rich content, forms, payments. Not only that, but this user experience will be personalized directly to you. It'll know, do you like really short things or longer things? It's going to be directly created, personalized for you. Now, you might be thinking, is this really going to happen? Well, it already has, believe it or not. Let me show you the world's first web browser. This was called Lynx. Now, I feel I was very lucky because I grew up at a time when I went to college in the early 90s in the dungeon of a computer science lab at the College of Business in Northern Arizona University. I got to use Lynx, and I thought it was amazing. There's so much. The world's knowledge felt like it was right in front of me. Little did I know how little the world's knowledge was actually there, but it was amazing. You didn't have to go to the library. You could just tab, click. It was awesome. Now compare that, to today's modern websites. It's dramatic. We would never go back to using that Lynx thing. But it took, 20 years to get what we would consider today to be well, that's a pretty good experience. But now we're 30 some odd years away from that, and look at what we have. Now, I think it's really, really important that we understand where AI is and where it's going. I would highly recommend, I've written a couple articles that go a little bit deeper than this, and I would highly recommend you read them. They're on X, so you can go ahead and grab them there. There's actually a few more articles than even those two, and I got 2 more coming. Here's the thing. If you think X is a social media platform, it kind of is, but that's not how I see it. I see it as a thought platform, a thinking platform. Now, it's all who you follow, okay? So there is garbage there, absolutely. But if you follow the right stuff, if you just spend maybe 2 days looking and following certain people, and then if you see something you don't like, just say, don't show me more of that. Within a few days, you're going to have some really amazing content. I could not do my job without X. So I highly recommend you read some of these articles for 2 reasons. One, you kind of have to know it because of your job. Second is, we need to usher our people, our church family, through some pretty amazing changes in this world. And if we don't understand that, we're so in trouble. So you have to understand this. You have to be helping your church leaders understand this. Okay, let's keep going. Next question. How should we get started? Well, it's always been the true on the web. Content is king. We have to be developing more and more content. Because the fact is, our people right now are starving for content. Every day they go looking for content, right? And they usually do it twice a day. A little bit in the morning, and a lot more after work. And if we have to be providing this content for them, because they're starving. And if we don't provide the content, what's going to happen? Well, they'll probably find something else to eat. We always do. But it won't be very nourishing to them. Now again, think back to those 5 categories of digital content. We need a little bit of all of that, right? We do need some entertainment just to unwind. We need a little bit of all of that. But I think people are seriously missing out on a balanced diet of spiritual content. And churches, we're not providing enough of it. And the other thing they could do is just go hungry, which definitely I think they're doing when it comes to spiritual content. Now, Jesus actually had something to say about this, and it was very simple. He said, hey, feed my sheep. And one of the ways we feed them is to give them content. And we have to do that not just on Sundays, because I think we feed them well on Sundays, but the sheep want to eat every day, and that's just like us. Okay, so how does that deal with the church family? We need to provide personalized growth paths for each person in our congregation. So we need to know, who are they, where are they in their spiritual disciplines, and then how do we move them forward. So we need to give them good spiritual content. But we also have to give them good content about things that happen in life, felt need content. At some point, something is going to happen where we just need to now have some insight, whether it's on some kind of addiction or family or marriage. We need to give them really good spiritual content so when they hit these road blocks in life that they can navigate those well. We also have to give them content to give to their seeker friends and family all around them, and that's part of GPO. Now, what about the seekers? Well, they need a ton of felt needs content, and it has to be a little bit different than the ones for our church family. While it needs to have biblical truth and guide them in biblical principles, it can't be too churchy, which is probably what our church family would prefer to have a little bit deeper. So we have to author, unfortunately, content for both of these audiences. They also want to, move forward in closer to God too, so they need that spiritual content. But again, it has to be authored differently, and it has to be voiced differently for them. And they also need to be pushed into physical community. So every time we have a digital touch point with someone who's not in our physical community, we need to push them towards a physical community. Either bring them towards us if they can get to us, or to another physical community. Now, when I say that, of course, I know there's edge cases. There are shut-ins who just can't come to a church. I'm not talking about them. But the vast majority of them probably can get to a physical community, and we need to lead them that way. So how do we develop this content? Well, the obvious answer, of course, is we need to generate it, right? So we need to generate more content. As churches, we should be content generation machines. And to some purpose, we are. We do that, right, on the weekend, right? And we need to repurpose that content. Now, of course, we put our full sermons online, and people can watch that. And I think there's probably many churches in here that repurpose that even further by snipping it into little pieces and putting it on social media, and that's great. 30 seconds to 60-second clips are amazing. I also think we need to repurpose that into like a 2 to 3 minute clip. So when we put our sermons online, we should be putting the full sermon, a few 2 to 3 minute ones, so you can get the whole idea, maybe pull people in to watch the full thing, and also 30 to 60 minute segments for social media. So we need to make sure we're repurposing everything that we have for digital. However, we also must curate content. Simply put, no church can satiate the diverse content needs of all their people. We have to work together. Now, let me ask you a question. Would it be difficult for your church to author one good article a week from your staff, from your volunteers? I'm pretty sure no matter what size church you are here, you could probably sign up to do one article a week. And many of you could probably do many, many more. Do you realize if just Rock churches did this, in 1 year we'd have 20,000 articles? We don't even need 20,000 articles. We need a lot, but we don't need that many. So it's a pretty easy goal to have. The magnification effect of large groups of people are amazing. We can literally change the world with just a few thousand people. Now, the good news is the Rock community has something called the Content Library. This is a feature that allows you to put content in your Rock instance, and with one button, you can push it up into a shared library that Spark hosts for you, and it's now available for everybody. And the other good news is everybody who's a Rock church can one button bring it down from the content library into theirs. And we really feel like this content library is something we really need to be working together on as a community. And we want to add more features to it, but we even need, first of all, we need much more content. Okay, so once we have this content, it doesn't stop there. We still must empower our people through God's people optimization. So we got the content, good. Now we got to give it out to the people. We have to activate our people. So we need to give them the right tools to share it. So first of all, we have to, I think, improve how we discover this content and how we filter it. That's got to be really good. Because even when it comes to a specific topic, say divorce, we don't just need one article on divorce. We probably need like 50 or 60 coming at it from all different angles so that we can personalize it just for that person who's going through that struggle. We also have to make sure that the content is worth sharing. This is an important one. I think right now our content library has a lot of good devotional content, but it's not always something that you can share with someone who's maybe not a Christian yet. So we have to make sure that we're building content that's really engaging and easy to share. But we also must cast clear vision, because we all go through, if you're like me, you go through life with a me filter. Show me a list of 100 articles, and I'm going to find those that I am interested in. But we have to change that. We have to cast the vision to say, don't put your me filter on, put your we filter on. Who do you know who could use this article? I'm pretty sure we could go through a list of even 10 articles, and if we put any amount of effort into it, we can find someone who might need these articles. And so we have to make sure that we cast clear vision. Okay, so changes we need to make. We need to own the channels of curation and consumption powered by GPO, God's People Optimization. The church must work together to build the tools to power our channels, which is Rock. We need to continue building the tools within Rock to share this content, and we have to work jointly to curate this content. We've gone over a lot, so let's recap a little bit of what we've talked about, okay? So, first, we have to break the Sunday-only mold, especially with our digital tools. Second, we need to focus on mission over method. We always have to put mission first, not the methods first. Next, we need to create and source more content, both for our church family and for the seekers. We need to empower people through GPO, God's People Optimization, and we need to develop our own outposts. So what are the next steps? Well, I have 2 sets of next steps. I have some for the leaders in the room. Leaders, the first thing that we need to do is that we need to reallocate resources to empower digital ministry. Currently, polling a lot of the current churches in the Rock community, we find that the average Rock church is spending only 2 to 3% on digital ministry. What is the right number? I don't know. But I think a good first step is 4 to 8%. We have to realize that the impact that these digital tools can provide will far eclipse the incremental improvements that we can make if we take that money and spend it on analog ministry. If you think about how much we spend on audio, video, LED walls, all that stuff, we should still do that. I'm not saying we shouldn't do that, but if we just allocate a little bit more of those resources to digital ministry, the return on investment, the return on ministry is going to be huge, far eclipsing, I think, the incremental improvements. Okay, leaders, also, we need you to hold us on the digital teams accountable to the mission. It's so easy for us to get attracted to bright, shiny objects. Now, earlier when I was talking about it took 2 years for me to convince leadership to put podcasts online, was that a leadership problem? It wasn't. It was my problem because I kept talking about the methods, what we should do, and I did not align it to the mission. I bet we could have had that thing approved in probably one meeting if I had properly aligned it to the mission. Instead, I just kept talking about, oh, this is the greatest thing. This will be so cool. That doesn't work. And we need you leaders to hold us accountable to that, to challenge us in that way. And the third thing is we need you as leaders to embrace the discomfort that comes with innovation. Again, it all seems obvious in hindsight, but it's not always that easy. Sometimes we're going to have to make mistakes. Elon says at Tesla, if you're in the engineering department, you will get fired if you don't make mistakes, because that's proving that you're not innovating enough. Now, if you work on the factory floor, that's different. You do not innovate on the factory floor. But if you're in the engineering department, you should. Okay, so this is for the leaders, for the digital teams, for the technologists in the room. First and foremost, we must steward leadership's trust faithfully. As we're giving more resources and more trust, we have to shepherd that faithfully. And the biggest way we need to do that is to make sure, again, that we're prioritizing the mission over the methods. If we're honest, we all get so enamored by that new idea that the corporate world's doing, or the new idea that the church down the street's doing, or just a new idea we read in a magazine. And if we can't tie that to mission, man, just don't bring it up until you can. And third, we must integrate volunteerism into digital ministry. We have to make sure that we're not the only ministry in the church that's not using volunteers. And why? For 2 reasons. One, we need to be good stewards of these resources. We need to make sure we're spending it on the right things. My personal belief is that we should not have paid staff doing data entry or deduping data. Volunteers are more than happy and more than capable of doing that. And trust me, paying someone does not mean that you can trust them more. If you give them the right vision, and if you give them the right training and have them sign a form, it's the same thing. In fact, I'd say if you have to pay them to do it, maybe you can trust the person who'll do it for free. And in my experience, we had these volunteers in spades when I worked in the church world. We had some that were so good, I had to tell them to calm down because I was actually trying to have a duplicate data so I could work out a feature, and they would merge it way too fast. And so they loved it. They actually did. Okay, a few closing thoughts before we finish up. Now, when we are looking at these new tools, we have to realize we're going into a brave new world. And as we do that, we have to make sure that we evaluate tools and services with discernment. Good news, we have a whole session later today on how to do that. So if that's something of interest, go ahead and go to that. We have to kind of make sure that we realize as we move into the new world, it's a little bit like the gold rush of the 1840s, right? You guys remember that? Digital ministry could be seen as like the next gold rush, and this is why we need to have discernment. Now, in the gold rush, there were 2 parties. There were the miners. The miners were focused on the value of the outcome. And realize you guys are all the miners. You look at this and you go, there's value in doing this. That's why we're doing this. But we have to be careful. We have to lead with discernment. Because like the gold rush, there were a few people who were just trying to take advantage of the miners. Just a few. So we have to realize that some tool providers are focusing on quick returns. Not all, but some. And we have to make sure that we are very discerning in how we move forward. One way you can do that, and you're going to learn a lot more this afternoon if that's of interest, but the one tip I would give you is there are no silver bullets. If anybody comes and tells you it's easy, just buy my silver bullets, everything will be great, man, run. We're going to a place, it's just going to be hard, okay? We're innovating and we're pioneering, expect it to be hard. I love this quote from Thomas Edison. Opportunity is missed by most people because it's dressed in overalls and looks like work. It's so true. I mean, have you ever seen something in life that was worth doing that was easy? I don't know anybody like that. And we have to realize that's where we're going. So anybody who says, this is easy, I got it, just like sign right here and you'll be happy, yikes. And more than that, we have to make sure that our leadership understands that. Sometimes with leadership, a lot of these services are come through a more of a relationship approach, which is a good thing, but it can also be very dangerous. Sometimes the golf course is not the best place to choose your digital ministry tools. So let's think about that. As we go into the as we look to the corporate world for some of these practices, it's a good place to go to find some best practices, but we have to be careful. We should not emulate the business world. We should borrow what's useful, reject what's not, and lead with conviction, not convention. Too many times we just go straight to the corporate world, we grab a great idea, and we immediately put it in a place without thinking with discernment. Now, I came from the corporate world. I respect the corporate world. I think there's a lot of things that we can learn from the corporate world, but we should not take their ideas wholesale. We should always put it through the filter of our mission. Nothing is more true than that than what I see a lot is the sales funnel. There's a lot of people who say, look at the sales funnel. Doesn't it look like your outreach funnel? Well, maybe if you squint, but you know what? We're not selling cars. We're selling something. We're not selling something. We're changing people's lives, encouraging to change their life. That's nothing like selling a car. And while there might be some little facets that we can glean, we shouldn't think of this as sales funnels. We shouldn't wholesale take these concepts from others and just apply them to the church. That brings me back to Steve Jobs. We're not selling trinkets. We're changing lives. Now, sometimes when we look at the corporate world and bring those lessons in, I think we do that primarily for two reasons. One is it's easy. It's easy to see the analogy and just copy and paste it and bring it in. Instead, we need to go back to first principles, and we need to say what is true and only bring in that of what's true. But I also think we have to be a little bit careful, because sometimes I think we go to the corporate world to seek validation, especially those of us maybe who didn't work in the corporate world or those who did. We want to go like, hey guys, like, you know, we're cool too. Like, we do good stuff. And we shouldn't care about that. They should be doing that to us. Like, you are doing significance. You are changing lives. I'm just selling sugar water or trinkets. And sometimes I think about this quote from John Boyd. Do you want to be someone or do you want to do something? I'd much rather do something. I don't really care about being somebody. I just want to do stuff that changes the world. And I think we need to think about that in the context, especially as we're thinking about the corporate world and the validation we might be seeking. Because at the end of the day, I don't really care what this community looks like to the corporate world. That's not who I care about. I want the people in hell to be, or the demons in hell to be afraid of what you guys do every day. That's our measure. It's not necessarily what do the corporate guys think of us. It's like they should be fearful that we're going to wake up tomorrow morning and we're going to go use these tools to change the world. So, coming back to it, how does it feel? If you don't feel the difference that you can make, man, I would reflect on that. With the skills that we have and the tool sets that we're building together and this community working together, all funded through a nonprofit, this is an amazing time to be working in the church. Now, we have a lot more things to cover, but I think you all need a break. So go ahead and take 15 minutes, and we'll be back in here, and author Dan Heath is going to talk to you about how to lead change within your organizations. Thank you.